Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph 13a of Meseches Brachos. We are starting 2 lines from the bottom of the page. The Gemara says Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. And the Gemara is continuing to discuss the halachos, the laws relating to Shema, and deriving them from the words of Shema itself. So the rabbis taught V'hayu. It says V'hayu advarim ha'ila, and these words shall be. What do we learn from V'hayu? Shelo yikro lemafreya, that you shouldn't read out of order. And this was the position of the Chachamim earlier in the Amud, that the Hayu teaches you that you shouldn't read the words of Shema out of order. Ha-devarim al-levavecha, these words should be on your heart. Yachol te'kol parsha tzricha kavana. Now you might think that the entire parsha needs to be said with kavana, with intent. And here intent seemingly means thinking about the meaning of the words. Talmud lomar ha'ela. It says, Vayadavarim ha'ela, these words, ad kan tzricha kavana. Up until here requires kavana. Up until the words alevavecha. But mikan va'elach, from here on, ein tzricha kavana, you don't need kavana. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. In other words, what requires kavana? Up until the words alev avecha, not including, so Rashi says ad kan ad levavecha. If we just go through what the words are, we have Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu is Hashem Echad, is one God. And then we say V'ahavta, we say Baruch Hashem, that's not actually in the Torah, but we say it quietly, and that also should have kavana. And then we say, for the meaning of the words, and then we say V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, you should love Hashem your God, b'chol levavcha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha. You should love Hashem your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your possessions. And then we say V'ayu adarim ha'ila, and these words should be on your heart. So, which words? Everything that we said up till now, up until this statement that these words should be on your heart, that should be said with kavana, that should be said with intent, you should be thinking about the words. Now, it's true that everything, you should always be thinking about the words that we say, but these ones especially, Tosos explains, because here we have the oneness of Hashem, and we have the love of Hashem, and we have, he says, the fear of Hashem, which doesn't actually mention fear, but it says, you should love Hashem with all your heart and all your soul and all your possessions, which I guess crosses into the bounds of fearing Hashem, being ready to give up your life. All your soul, being ready to give up your life. Okay, so that's the position of Rabbi Eliezer, that up until there requires, it's ma'akev. When we say requires, meaning it's essential. If you don't have kavana, if you don't have intent for those words, you're not yotze the mitzvah, you don't fulfill the mitzvah of Shema. Amar le Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said to him, Harehu Omer, but it says, Asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha. Right? So if you continue on a little bit, it doesn't just say, Vayu advarim ha'ele al levavecha. That's actually not the words. It doesn't say these words should be on your heart. It says, Vayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha. That I command you today should be on your heart. Mikarata lamad, from here you learn, says Rabbi Akiva, shekol parsha kula tzricha kavana. That actually the entire first paragraph requires kavana, and he's deriving this. Tosfos explains from the word mitzavacha. Mitzavacha implies also what's to come. If it's only talking about the words that I already told you, that I commanded you, these words that I commanded you, the previous words should be on your heart. But that's not what it says. It says Rabbi Akiva, it says the words that I command you now, present. The implication is that it includes the words to come as well. From here we learn, says Rabbi Akiva, that the whole first paragraph requires intent, requires that we concentrate on the words. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Bar Bechana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Akiva. And Ikadamasni lahadatanya. Now there are those who teach it about the following, meaning this statement of Rabbi Bar Bechana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan of what the halacha is. They have it not going on Rabbi Akiva, but on a different opinion, which I think is the same opinion as we'll see in a moment, but a different statement. D'Tanya, we're learning a brayso. Hakoreh Shema, one who reads Shema, tzarich sheyichaven es libo, he has to concentrate. Now, it doesn't say concentrate on what in our version of the Gemara. Some versions have bikula on the whole thing. And then we have, so the first opinion would say you have to concentrate on the entire Shema. And it sounds like not just the first paragraph, but the entire second and maybe third even. Rav Acha mishum Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rav Acha, name Rabbi Yehuda says, Kivan shekiven libo perek rishon, shuv eino tzarech. As long as you have kavana for the first paragraph, you no longer need kavana, need to intend the words, think about the words. Again, we're not saying you shouldn't think about the words, but even if you don't, you're still yotze. But the first paragraph, it's ma'akev. It's essential, you have to think about the words. That is Rav Acha, the name of Rabbi Yehuda. And on that, Amar Rabbi Bar Bechana, Rabbi Yochanan, halacha Rav Acha, Sham Rishon Rabbi Yehuda. And there, it's on that Rabbi Bar Bechana saying the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that's the halacha. But it's the same as Rabbi Akiva said. It's that one should concentrate on the words for the whole first paragraph. And we have Rabbi Bar Bechana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, saying that that's the halacha. Tanya Yidach, we have another brayso. The other brayso says, V'hayu shelo yikra lemafreya. Same thing, that V'hayu, and these words shall be, it means that they have to be in order. You can't read them out of order. Al levavecha, on your heart. Now what does that mean? What has to be on your heart? Meaning what has to be concentrated upon? Which words are you only yotze, do you only fulfill the obligation if you concentrate on them? So Reb Zutra Omer, Reb Zutra says, Ad kan mitzvahs kavana. The first paragraph, you have a mitzvah of kavana, requires intent for the words. Mikan va'ilach mitzvahs kriya. But from there on, the second paragraph and on, there's only a mitzvah to read it, not necessarily to intend to think about it. It's not required. Rabbi Yoshia Omer, Rabbi Yoshia says the opposite. Ad kan mitzvahs kriya. No, the first paragraph is the mitzvah to recite it. And it sounds like he's saying not to concentrate on it. Mikan va'ilach mitzvahs kavana. And from here on, the second paragraph and on, there's a mitzvah to have kavana, to have intent. So now the Gemara will examine each of these opinions. It's going to begin with the first opinion. The first opinion was, the first opinion in this brayso was Reb Zutra. And Reb Zutra said that the first paragraph, there's a mitzvah of kavana. You have to intend. It sounds like you don't have to say the words, you just have to think about the words. And the second paragraph, you have to say the words, but you don't have to think about the words. Ask the Gemara, why is the second paragraph different that we say you have to read them, you have to recite them? Because it says to speak of them. Well, hachanami, the first paragraph also, haksiv, it says, v'dibarta, and you should speak of them. So why would there only be an obligation to think about the words of the first paragraph and not to also speak of them, not to say them, not to recite them? It says, v'dibarta, you should speak of them. Says the Gemara, you're right. Hachi kamar, this is what he was really saying. What Reb Zutra was saying was, ad kan mitzvahs kavana ukriya. The first, up until the first, and including the first paragraph, there's a mitzvah of both. Kavana and kriya. You have to intend the words, you have to think about the meaning of the words, and you have to recite them with your mouth. Mikan va'ilach, but from there on, beginning with the second paragraph, below, kriya below kavana. From there on, there's you read them, but you don't have to have intent necessarily. So the second paragraph, it says, you should speak of them, but you don't necessarily the having kavana for the words is not ma'akev, it's not essential. Certainly recommended again, but not required. Umayshna adkar mitzvahs kavana or kriya. Now, still, why is it that the first paragraph we're saying that you need intent and you need to recite, tichsiv, al vavecha, because it says on your heart, that's intent. V'dibarta bam, and it says speak of them, that's reciting them with your mouth. But the second paragraph also, haksiv, it says al vavchem l'daber bam. It says on your hearts to speak of them. So it sounds like also in the second paragraph, you should have to have kavana and recite them, and not just recite them. Says the Gemara, no, the words al vavchem in the second paragraph are used for a different teaching. Those words are needed for the teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, the Amar, who says that the verse that says al vavchem on your hearts, this is the verse, V'samtem es devarai eileh, and you should place these words, it says where, al vavchem, you should place these words on your heart. What is that referring to? That is referring to tefillin. That is referring to the mitzvah of tefillin, as the pasuk goes on, it says, you should tie the words to your arm, and it should be tefillin between your eyes. So, when it says that you should place these words on your heart, it's not saying that you should just have intent. Rather, tzricha shetehei sima kineger halev. What it's telling you is that they should be placed near the heart. It's telling you, when it says you should tie them as a sign on your hand, it's telling you where. It's telling you it's not your hand here, it's your arm near your heart. You should place them on your heart, that the tefillin should be by the heart. So that's what al vavchem is for, and it's not to teach you intent, that you need to concentrate on the words. So Reb Zutra holds the first paragraph needs both concentration on the words, kavana on the words, and they have to be recited. The second paragraph, it suffices to just recite them. Okay, Amar Mar. Now we're going to quote the Brachos and examine the second opinion. Rabbi Yoshia Omer. Rabbi Yoshia says, Ad kan mitzvahs kriya, mikam ba'elch mitzvahs kavana. Rabbi Yoshia seemed to say the opposite. He said the first paragraph, there's a mitzvah to recite, and the second paragraph, you have to have intent. Ask the Gemara, why are you saying that in the second paragraph you need intent? It must be mishum d'chsiv al vavchem, because it says on your heart, and he doesn't say that that's talking about tefillin. He must say, if he says you need intent for the second paragraph, he must understand that al vavchem is talking about having intent. So hachanami, so here too in the first paragraph, haksiv, it says al vavavecha, on your heart. So why did he say that only the second paragraph needs kavana, needs intent? You have to think about the words, because it says al vavchem, but in the first paragraph it says al vavavecha, on your heart. Says the Gemara, hachikamer, you're right. That's not what he meant. This is what he was really saying. Ad kan mitzvahs kriya v'kavana. Until now, the first paragraph, you need both kriya and kavana. You need to recite the words with your mouth, and you have to have intent. To that, he agrees with the first opinion of Rav Zutra. Mikan va'elach, but from here on, the second paragraph, mikan va'elach, kavana below kriya. You only need intent, you don't need to say the words, you just have to think them. So the first opinion is saying that they both opinions agree that for the first paragraph you need both. The second paragraph, though, the first opinion says you need to recite the words, but you don't need the kavana. The second opinion says you do not need to recite them, but you do need to have kavana. Ask the Gemara, Umay shna adkan mitzvahs kriya v'kavana. What's different that in the first paragraph we're saying that you need both kriya and kavana, you need to recite and have intent, t'chsiv al vavecha v'dibarta bam. It says on your heart, which teaches me kavana, and it says v'dibarta bam, which teaches me you have to speak of them. Hasamnami, the second paragraph also, haksiv, it says both. It says al vavchem, on your hearts, v'daber bam, to speak of them. So it sounds like you need both kavana and to speak of them, and to recite the words. How could you say that you only need kavana, you don't need to recite the words? Says the Gemara, Hu b'divrei Torah ksiv. That's because the daber bam over there is speaking words of Torah. It's not telling you that you have to say the words of Shema. It's talking about speaking of words of Torah. V'hachi kamar achmana. And what the Torah is telling you is like miru b'naich v'Torah kiechi dilegar subahu. It's telling you to teach your children Torah so that they speak in it. They know it. What's the pasuk? It says there, V'limadatem osam es b'nechem l'daber bam. You should teach them to your children to speak in them. It's not telling you, the first opinion held was talking about the Shema. Teach them the Shema to speak of them. And it teaches you that you have to recite the Shema, the second paragraph. But this second opinion says no, that's just talking about Torah in general. You should teach the words of Torah to your children, so that they can speak in words of Torah. But it's not telling you that you have to speak and recite the second paragraph of Shema. According to this opinion, it's enough just to think the words of the second paragraph of Shema. Okay, so that's a machlokas. We, in practice, I think paskin like the first opinion that you need to say the second paragraph of Shema, but the kavana is not essential. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis taught. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear Israel, Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. Ad kan tricha kavana salev. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Until here you need to have kavana. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And that's how we paskin strictly, is that only the first line of Shema needs kavana, although we prefer that you also maintain kavana at least for the first sentence of Ve'ahavta, for Baruch Shem and Ve'ahavta. But Rabbi Meir says that just the first line of Shema requires kavana. Amar Rava halacha Rabbi Meir. Rava says that halacha is like Rabbi Meir, and like I said, that is the halacha. Tanya, we're learning a brisa. Sumchus Omer. Sumchus says, Kol hamarich be'echad marichin lo yama b'shnosav. Anybody who extends the word echad of Shema, Hashem echad, Hashem is one, his days are extended. It gives you a chance to concentrate on the oneness of Hashem. Amar v'acha bar Yaakov uvidalid. You should also extend the dalid. Echad. So you should hold the dalid. It's a little tricky because we don't want you to say du. That's not the right word. So you we'll see. Let's just see what he says. Amar v'ashu bilvad shelo yachtov b'ches. But don't cut off the ches. So don't lose the ches when you try to extend the dalid. In practice, I think it sounds more like echad. You don't really extend it so much. But the idea is, as Rashi explains, that you extend the dalid in order to have in mind that Hashem rules over all four corners of the earth, all four directions, you could say, as well as the heavens and the earth. So that's what you have to consider, as the Gemara is about to say. The Gemara tells us, Rabbi Yirmiyah v'Yasif kamed Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Yirmiyah was once sitting in front of Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Chaziyat avamarich tuva. He saw that he was really extending his dalet out a long time. Amarle, he said to him, Kevan de'am lichte lemalo mato l'arba ruchos hashamayim sulo trichas. Once you have anointed God as king over the heavens and the earth and all the four directions of the world, so you don't need to extend any longer. That is enough. You don't have to go on and on. So it's enough. So you don't have to extend so much. But that's what you have to try to have in mind when you say the word echad. Besides for the oneness of God, that's one thing. But also the dalid connotes this idea that Hashem rules over the four directions, and it seems that also you should have in mind the heavens and the earth. Okay. Amar Rav Nasan bar Mar Ukva Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Nasan, the son of Mar Ukva, said in the name of Rav Yehuda. Al levavecha be'amida. Al levavecha should be said standing stationary. Not necessarily standing, it could be sitting, but it shouldn't be while somebody's moving. That way they can concentrate. Ask the Gemara, Al levavecha zal gadaitach? It's the words Al levavecha. Why do you need to be stationary for the words Al levavecha on your heart? Ela ima ad Al levavecha b'amida. What we mean is up until Al levavecha you should be standing. Mikan va'elach lo. But from there on you don't need to stand. So this would be like the opinion that you don't need to be stationary. This would be like the opinion that you need to concentrate up until Al levavecha. You have to concentrate on the words. And if you have to concentrate on the words, you shouldn't be moving. You should be stationary. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kol HaParsha Kula B'Amida. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the whole first paragraph you should be stationary. And explains the Gemara, Va'az Rabbi Yochanan L'Taimei. This is Rabbi Yochanan according to his reasoning, according to his understanding. To Amar Rabba Bar Brachan Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because we had a statement from in the name of Rabbi Yochanan earlier, Halacha Rav Acha Shamar Mishum Rabbi Yehuda, that the halacha is like Rav Acha in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. That was one of the people who was of the opinion that you have to concentrate on the words of the whole first paragraph. If indeed, and the halach, that's how Rabbi Yochanan paskins, that's how he rules. If indeed you have to concentrate on the whole first paragraph, then Rabbi Yochanan says you need to be stationary for the entire first paragraph. Again, being that we paskin, strictly speaking, that it's enough to have in mind to be concentrating on the first line, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, perhaps Baruch Shem as well, but then it's enough to be stationary for that line itself. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Zu Kriya Shema Shel Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. That's all Rabbi Yehuda Nasi would say. Amar Le, that was his Kriya Shema, that's what he held you have to say, that first line. Okay. Amar Le Rav Le Rabbi Chia, Rav said to Rabbi Chia, Lo Chazina Le Rebbe Demekama Le Malchus Shamayim. I didn't see that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi accepted the yoke of heaven upon himself. In other words, what happened was, as Rashi explains, he was giving shir. He started before the time of Shema, and it was a long shir, or at least, the way Rashi says it is, when the time for Shema came, I didn't see him stop the shir to say Shema. Maybe extend it all the way till the end of the time of saying Shema. It was a long shir. I didn't see that he said Shema and accepted the yoke of heaven. So that's what that is what Rav Chia. Sorry, that's what Rav said to Rabbi Chia. So Amar Le. So Rabbi Chia said back, Bar Pachsi, son of the Chashuv one, son of it's a compliment, son of great ones. I'll tell you when he says Shema. Bisha Shema v'yadav alpanav mekabel olav malchus shamayim. When he puts his hands over his face, that's when he accepts the yoke of heaven. In other words, he did it in the middle of shir, in the middle of his class. He went like this, covering his eyes, or like this, and that's when he said. And this is really the source for the idea of covering your eyes when you say the first line of Shema. Then the Gemara asks, Choser v'gomra or eno choser v'gomra? Did he then say the rest later, or that's it? He only said the beginning, the first line, the first paragraph. So after he taught the students, did he continue and say the rest of Shema? So Bar Kapara Omer eno choser v'gomra. Bar Kapara said no, he didn't continue. That was it. He would just say that paragraph, that line. Rabbi Shimon b'Rebbe Omer choser v'gomra. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he said, yeah, my father did finish the Shema at the end. Amar le Bar Kapara Rabbi Shimon b'Rebbe. Bar Kapara said to Rabbi Shimon b'Rebbe, the son of Rebbe, Bishlam u'ledidi damina eno choser v'gomra. It makes sense according to me that I say that he did not finish it after That's why he would always try to find a topic that mentioned Yetzias Mitzrayim, because there's a mitzvah to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. And we try, doesn't say why, but the ideal is apparently to say it in conjunction with Shema, or during at least the time of Shema. And well, I guess at this point we can say not necessarily. Just there is a mitzvah every day to mention the Exodus. We usually accomplish it in Shema. At the end of Shema, we say, Ani Hashem Elokecha Moshe Yetziaschem Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem your God, who took you out of Egypt, and that's where we mention the Exodus. So this question of did Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi end up saying the rest of the Shema, in a way is saying, did he end up mentioning the Exodus in Shema? And Bar Kapara said he didn't, and Bar Kapara said to Reb Shimon Rebbe, that explains why he would always try to find a topic that mentioned the Exodus, because he wanted to make sure to mention the Exodus, to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim, to fulfill that mitzvah. But according to you, Rabbi Shimon, De'amart Choser V'Gomer, who said, no, yeah, of course, my father, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, would finish the Shema later. Why would he have to specifically try to find a topic that mentioned the Exodus, that mentions Yetzias Mitzrayim? He's going to say the end of Shema anyways. He's going to mention it. So Reb Shimon Rebbe answered, K'dei lahaskir Yetzias Mitzrayim bismana, because he wanted to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim during the time of Shema. And if he would wait till later and finish it off later, say it later, it wasn't the time of Shema anymore, apparently, and it was after the shir, was too late. So at that point he would have missed the time of Shema. And it seemed, I'm not sure why, but that what he's saying is that there's an ideal, not only do we have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every day, but there's an ideal to mention it during the Zman, during the time period of Shema, those first 3 hours of the day. And therefore, he would try to find a topic that mentioned Yetzias Mitzrayim, even though he would end up saying the end of Shema later and mention the Exodus then. Amar of Ila Breder of Shmuel Bar Mirta Mishmei de Rav. Rav Ila, the son of Rav Shmuel the son of Mirta, saying the name of Rav. Amar Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad v'nenas b'sheina yatsa. If a person is super tired and he says the first paragraph of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then not even the first paragraph, the first line, and then he's overcome by sleep, yatsa, he fulfills his obligation to say Shema. The basic obligation is fulfilled with just the recitation of the first line. That's the opinion of Rav. Amar le Rav Nachman l'Daru Abde. Rav Nachman, a different story, told his slave Daru, Bipsuka kama tsaran. If I'm reading the first paragraph, the first line, the first pasuk, and I'm drifting off, I'm tired, bimitzarami, bother me to keep me awake. Tfei lo tetzarim, but after that, don't. If I'm not concentrating on the rest of the words, it's okay. The main thing is the first paragraph, the first line, the first pasuk. But the rest is not as important. Amar le Rav Yosef le Rav Yosef brei de Rabba. Rav Yosef said to Rav Yosef the son of Rabba, Avucha hechi hava aved. He asked him, what did your father do? In terms of this, getting in the first pasuk, falling asleep, what was his take? What was his opinion? Amar le, so Rav Yosef, the son of Rabba, said, Bipsuka kama avaka mitzar nafshe tvei, mitzar nafshe. For the first pasuk, to say it with concentration, he would bother himself. He would, do whatever it takes. Tvei lo hava mitzar nafshe. But beyond that, he wouldn't be mitzar himself. He wouldn't bother himself, trouble himself, to make sure it was said with concentration. Okay. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Praktan lo yikar kriya Shema. A person who's lying flat on their back should not read Shema in that position. Ask the Gemara, Mikrahu de lo likri ha migna shaper dami. Now you're saying that he shouldn't say Shema in that position. Are you saying though that it's okay for him to fall asleep in that position? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi layataman degani aparkid. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi cursed a person who fell asleep flat on their back. If they are flat on their back and they have kisho yever, they have an erection, so it's very visible and disgraceful. So a person shouldn't sleep right on their back, flat on their back. So why are you saying a person shouldn't say Shema in that position? It sounds like, but to sleep in that position is okay. They shouldn't even sleep in that position, flat on their back. So Amri will explain, Migna ki matzli shaper dami. We're talking about you're not completely flat on your back, you're leaning a bit to the side, slightly to the side. So to go to sleep slightly to the side, that's fine. But to read Shema, afal gav de matzli nami aser. To only be slightly lean to the side, that's aser. You can't say Shema in that position. You're accepting the yoke of heaven. It's too still too sprawled out to you're not even supporting yourself. In order to say Shema, you have to at least be like lying on your side. But you can't be just slightly lean to the side. And afagav dematzli nami aser. Even if you're leaning slightly to the side, it's still forbidden to say Shema in that position. Av Rabbi Yochanan matzli v'kari. But what about Rabbi Yochanan? He did say Shema just slightly lean to the side, not flat on his back, but just slightly lean to the side. It seems like it's okay. Says the Gemara, no. Shani Rabbi Yochanan de Baal Basar hava. Rabbi Yochanan is different. He was a Baal Basar. He was corpulent. He was very heavy, and it was very difficult for him to turn to the side completely. So he was allowed to do it just slightly leaning. But unless it's extenuating circumstances like that, a person may not say Shema, not only not flat on their back, but even just slightly leaning. They would have to be completely turned to the side in order to say Shema if they're lying down. Okay, we'll pick up from here, but Ezras Hashem next time.